An endangered language is one that is likely to become extinct in the near future. Despite the colonization Guam endured for nearly 400 years to erase and override our culture, our language is not dying. In 1948 and 1950, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Organic Act of Guam led to the recognition of the Chamorro's rights and gave responsibility to our government to upkeep the culture, setting a future where our language, CHamoru, can thrive freely in our generation. Guam's previous periods were shaped by what governments had authority over the island. The first being the Spanish regime. They started contact in 1521 with Ferdinand Magellan and initiated colonization in 1668 for Catholic conversion. These events led to the push of Spanish traditions, causing the replacement of their culture. After their 200-year-long reign, Spanish made up 55% of the Chamorro vocabulary. Following the Spanish-American War of 1898, Guam came under U.S. control after being ceded. The government had power over Guam, and they ruled the island with a naval military government where the officers would abuse their powers to enforce their practices and languages onto the islanders. Implementing their English language into daily life, they taught English in education systems and officially banned CHamoru, our native language, in 1917 through Executive Order No. 243. Those who resisted would be punished unjustly, and since the Chamorro were regarded as non-citizens, with no representation or government, they were unsuccessful due to their pleas falling on deaf ears. The 40-plus years of U.S. rule would come to a stop during World War II on December 10, 1941, marking the start of the Japanese control over Guam. They renamed the island to Omiyajima, or Great Shrine Island, placing the island under martial law where the Chamorro would be oppressed and abused. They weren't allowed to acknowledge their culture and were forced to celebrate Japanese achievements and victories. The authority over education and culture disconnected the children from their heritage, encouraging parents to not teach the younger generations Chamorro for better future opportunities where other languages would be expressed more. This further eroded the cultural identity of the Chamorro, which was already impacted by the past erasures. During the near 400-year-long colonization held over Guam, the Chamorros of this time did not have human rights to defend themselves, leading to years of resistance and fighting for recognition as U.S. citizens and a proper civil government. Our petitions stem back to 1901 and formed the Guam Congress in 1917. With the purpose of resisting our oppression with a larger platform, our efforts led to two determined politicians, B.J. Bordallo and F.B. Leon Guerrero, to discuss the unjust treatment they faced under U.S. naval government, but they were denied any recognition due to the U.S. Navy. They tried to convince the previous president, Franklin Roosevelt, to deny us by arguing that people of the locality have not yet reached a state of development commensurate with the personal independence, obligations, and responsibilities of United States citizenship. Following this, tensions between the islanders and government grew, causing the 1949 Congress walkout made effective by Carlos P. Taitano through the power of the news. The main contributors were the United Press International and the Associated Press, giving us recognition in the mainland, fueling our fight for the Organic Act. The tension for rights and responsibilities shifted dramatically on December 10, 1948. The United Nations General Assembly created the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It protected the rights of the people after the dehumanizing events of World War II and the Holocaust. The legislation allowed the people of Guam to finally have the freedom to express their culture and language freely. They were recognized as individuals with rights, and the universal government had a responsibility to protect them. Following these events, the people of Guam held a meeting with the floor of the Assembly where they would discuss their issues with the military government on March 5, 1949. The Guam Congress representatives agreed to send a bill to the U.S. Congress, which demanded an Organic Act and a civil government to the island. This request was approved by then-President Harry S. Truman on August 1, 1950, recognizing us as U.S. citizens and establishing a civil government not powered by the military. The islanders were recognized as an unincorporated territory of the United States.
While the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Organic Act were pivotal moments in Guam's history, they affected the islanders differently. The UDHR outlined the human rights of the general people to allow freedom of speech and belief without fear. These articles followed an era of decolonization with the protection of their rights where they were under foreign oppression. The Chamorro people finally had a platform to fight more freely for their culture, traditions weren't as oppressed, and activists joined together to raise awareness of the language. They could finally speak their native tongue without foreign influences being forced upon them. The Organic Act provided the people of Guam citizenship and a self-government. With citizenship, they were given freedoms and protections under the Bill of Rights. Amendment 1 and Amendment 8 were most important for the fight for their language, since they guaranteed freedom of speech and protected them from cruel punishment. This allowed them to spread the word with less oppression of outside authority. For civil government, we were given autonomy over our island after years of military rule. This entitled the people of Guam to support their privileges, creating systems that benefited them and aided cultural revival with civil matters. Although the Organics Act granted many rights that the Chamorro people did not possess before, the civil government and our citizenship held issues that we advocated for. The administration of Guam was tightly connected and controlled by the United States as our governors were appointed by U.S. authority. Another issue of this time was the growing concern of their given citizenship. It wasn't equal to those in the United States since they were exempt from key constitutional protections. They were denied the right to vote for future presidents and lacked representation in America's political system. These liberties were guaranteed to their citizens, yet our people were the exception. In awareness of these struggles, activists of our island petitioned to achieve equal rights for citizens in the U.S. to this day. With the civil government achieved by our people, we created new systems which promote our language. The Commissione Fino, translated as the Chamorro Language Commission, aids in the school. It was a recognized authority over the language, assisted in creating the orthography, and supported the dictionary's development. The program was a vital point in the progression of Chamorro as they made the language's rules and created Chamorro names for agencies and signs, applying them to the islanders' daily life. In the educational department of Guam, the bilingual biculture program was born, and through its legacy starting from 1970 to 1975, it solidified Chamorro in the learning environments. It allowed for the youth to be professionally taught or even use Chamorro in schools for the first time, and marked a turning point in Guam's history where their native language was being encouraged instead of suppressed. The change in authority connected the youth with their native heritage. By the 5th grade, most students would be able to achieve a truly bilingual experience, communicating through Chamorro 50% of the time. The successful nature of this program influenced the Guam Department of Education, GDOE, to authorize another program like it. The Chamorro Language and Culture Program, CLCP, would end up as the predecessor of the Bilingual Biculture Program in 1977, allocating 20 to 30 minutes daily for Chamorro culture and language classes. The CLCP would eventually be turned into the Chamorro Studies Department, focused on the same goal of heritage revitalization. By 1991, the NFRC would be created and implemented in public schools, recited in Chamorro alongside the Pledge of Allegiance by the students as an oath swearing to protect the language and culture. It encouraged younger generations to prioritize their heritage. Education of the language would be spread outside of schools, not limiting the teachings of the youth. Books such as Let's Chat in Chamorro and Chamorro English Dictionary were made with foreign translations. Broadcast shows such as GUAM Radio would have 15-minute Chamorro lessons. Language comic strips would be included in PDN newspapers. Awareness would be seen in Malfunction, a television show that influences younger audiences. The language would also be spread on the World Wide Web and accessible to the general public. There were online dictionaries, lessons, histories, and PSAs relating to Guam. Alongside the teachings of the youth, holidays were created in honor of Guam's culture, such as Mes CHamoru. It starts on the first Monday of every March and offers a month of festivities relating to their heritage. This holiday hopes to bring their culture to the masses through culture music, dancing, exhibitions, historical walking tours, and even a reenactment of Magellan's landing. Despite being U.S. citizens, the people of Guam didn't have the right to vote in presidential elections. Activists in these nations will fight with the legislation for voting rights. I do feel robbed not being able to vote. Philip Gilbert, a resident of Guam, shared his sentiments, stating that it felt unfair and unjust to be treated as a non-citizen after serving his country. To be a citizen means to be a member of the political community, not in the U.S. It has been nearly 80 years since the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Organics Act was signed. The recognition of the Chamorro's rights and the responsibility of our government upheld the culture and future for Chamorro. Thanks to the ever-growing effort towards saving our island's language, there are still nearly 40,000 speakers of our English worldwide, with our people making sure our language continues flourishing. However, we cannot let our guard down and believe our culture is saved, as this fight will continue for as long as this culture lives on. While we work to preserve our own heritage, we must also stand in union with other marginalized cultures facing oppression, ensuring that their heritage and histories are not erased, but celebrated and protected alongside our own.
Para putehi, San